I watched my wife smile as the judge prepared to erase me from existence while I was standing right outside that courtroom door. The air in the hallway felt heavier than it should have been, like the building itself knew what was about to happen. Inside, Daniel Carter, barely holding his breath, could hear faint fragments of voices through the thick wood. A judge speaking, papers turning, his name being used like he no longer belonged to it. He wasn't supposed to be here. According to the court, Daniel Carter was already dead. A closed casket, a signed certificate, a story finalized by his own wife, Melissa, and her lawyer, Victor Hale. Clean, fast, and airtight. They didn't just take his money, they erased him. And now they were seconds away from legally sealing everything, his company, his accounts, even his home, into Melissa's hands, like it was always meant to be hers. Then the hallway door behind him clicked. A court officer stepped out, looking directly at Daniel. "Final verification is complete," the officer said quietly. "The estate ruling is about to be finalized." Daniel's hand tightened on the folder in his grip. Inside that courtroom, his wife was about to win everything, and the judge was about to sign his life away forever, without knowing he was standing right there. Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. A faint buzz came from inside the courtroom, voices rising slightly, like the final moments of a decision already made. Daniel didn't move, because if he moved now, if anyone inside glanced at the door at the wrong second, everything would collapse before he even had a chance to be seen. Inside that room, his life was already over. At least that's what the system had decided. 3 months earlier, Daniel Carter was a normal man, running his logistics company, paying employees, arguing with vendors, living a life that felt predictable. Then came the accident, a late-night call, a crashed vehicle, a body that was confirmed too quickly, too neatly, too convenient. And while the world mourned him in passing, his wife Melissa didn't slow down at all. She shifted, fast, efficient, almost rehearsed. Within days, she wasn't just grieving, she was organizing. And by the time Victor Hale stepped in as the family lawyer, everything had already started moving in one direction, forward without Daniel. Daniel's jaw tightened as he listened through the door again. A judge's voice cut through the muffled silence inside. "Estate transfer authorization will now be finalized." That sentence hit harder than anything else, because it meant Melissa wasn't just inheriting his life, she was officially taking it. Daniel looked down at the folder in his hand. Inside were documents no one was supposed to question: hospital logs, incomplete biometric records, and one signature inconsistency that no one had bothered to check when declaring him dead. That single mistake is why he was here. A second sound came from the courtroom, louder this time. A chair shifting, someone standing. Then the court officer outside Daniel glanced at his watch and stepped closer to the door again. "They're moving to final signature," he said quietly. "Once Victor Hale signs, the estate is locked permanently." Daniel didn't answer, because he was watching something else. Through the narrow glass panel on the courtroom door, he could see movement. Melissa leaning slightly forward at the plaintiff's table, calm, composed, hands folded neatly like she was attending a routine business approval instead of sealing a man's disappearance. Beside her, Victor Hale was already standing. That was the moment Daniel felt it shift. Not suspicion anymore, execution. Victor adjusted his tie, turned slightly toward the judge, and nodded as if everything had already been agreed in advance. No hesitation, no review, just finality. Daniel's stomach tightened, because that nod didn't look like a lawyer finalizing paperwork. It looked like someone closing a deal. The judge inside lifted a pen. "Proceed with signature confirmation." The words were muffled through the door, but Daniel caught enough. His heartbeat spiked. He looked down at the folder again. Inside was the biometric hospital log sat at the top. Clean, simple, devastating. It showed one thing no one in that courtroom had bothered to verify. No confirmed identity match was ever completed on the body they buried. No fingerprint scan approved. No DNA cross-check finalized. Just assumption. And paperwork built on top of it. A system that had replaced truth with speed. The officer shifted beside him. Now or never, he muttered, almost like a warning. Daniel's hand moved toward the door handle, but before he could push, the courtroom door suddenly opened from the inside with force. Victor Hale stepped out first, not calmly, not professionally, fast. His eyes swept the hallway and landed directly on Daniel. For a fraction of a second, everything in Victor's face collapsed. Recognition, alarm, and something worse, fear. Because whatever was supposed to happen inside had just been interrupted by the one thing they never accounted for. Daniel Carter was still alive, and Victor had just seen him standing outside the door. Victor didn't speak at first. He just stood in the doorway, blocking it half open, like his body was deciding whether to let reality back into the room. Inside the courtroom, voices paused. The silence that followed wasn't normal. It was reactive, like the entire room had felt something change without being told what it was yet. Daniel didn't move, but he saw it clearly now. Victor's breathing had shifted, faster, controlled but failing. His eyes flicked once down to Daniel's folder, then back to Daniel's face, as if confirming something that was supposed to be impossible. Then Victor forced his expression to harden. "What is this?" he said sharply, loud enough for the hallway and courtroom to hear. That voice change mattered more than the words, because it wasn't confusion, it was damage control. The court officer beside Daniel stiffened immediately. "Sir, this area is restricted during a state finalization." Victor didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed locked on Daniel. "You are interfering with a sealed probate proceeding," Victor continued, raising his voice now, stepping slightly out of the doorway to regain control of the space. "This man is not Daniel Carter." A beat. Inside the courtroom, movement resumed, but slower now, hesitant. People reacting to uncertainty creeping into a system that was supposed to be finished. Daniel finally spoke. "Then ask her." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Victor's jaw tightened, and that was when Melissa appeared behind him. She walked slowly to the doorway, still composed, but not as flawless as before. Her eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time, there was no performance in them, just calculation. Then recognition, and underneath it, panic she was trying to bury. The courtroom behind her was now watching. The judge had stopped writing. The pen hovered above the document. "Counselor Hale, explain this disruption immediately." Victor didn't turn around. He couldn't, because Daniel had already raised the folder slightly and said the one thing Victor never wanted said out loud. "Tell them why there was no biometric match." That sentence changed the temperature in the hallway instantly. Melissa's fingers curled slightly at her side. Victor finally broke eye contact, just for a second, and in that second, Daniel knew. The system inside was no longer just questioning him, it was about to start questioning them. Victor exhaled slowly, then stepped forward into the hallway fully, closing the distance, lowering his voice now only for Daniel. "You should not be here." Not a threat, a warning. And from inside the courtroom, the judge's voice rose again. "Bring him in." The door behind Victor opened wider, and Daniel realized there was no turning back anymore. Victor stepped aside slowly, not because he agreed, because he had no choice anymore. The judge's order echoed again from inside the courtroom, sharper this time. "Bring him in." Those two words changed everything. The court officer beside Daniel hesitated, then placed a hand lightly near Daniel's arm. Not forceful yet, but no longer optional either. Daniel didn't resist, because resisting would only make it louder, and he needed silence to break this open properly. As he stepped forward, the courtroom doors opened wider, revealing the full room at once. Every head turned, every movement stopped. Melissa was still standing near the plaintiff's table, but now she wasn't composed in the same way anymore. Her posture was perfect, but her eyes were locked onto Daniel, like she was trying to rewrite what she was seeing in real time. Victor walked in first, quickly moving toward the judge's bench, speaking fast under his breath. "Your Honor, this is a serious procedural breach. This individual has no legal standing in this matter." The judge raised a hand. "Enough." Silence snapped across the courtroom instantly. Daniel stepped fully inside. The sound of the doors closing behind him felt louder than anything else. Now he was visible to everyone. Not outside, not hidden, present. The judge leaned forward slightly. "State your identity for the record." Daniel didn't hesitate. Daniel Carter. A ripple moved through the room again, stronger this time. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Carter was declared deceased 3 months ago under certified documentation. Daniel slowly raised the folder. That certification was built on a missing verification. Victor interjected immediately. "There is no requirement for biometric confirmation in all field deaths." Daniel turned slightly toward him. "That's not true for unidentified casualties." That line landed differently. Because it wasn't emotional, it was procedural. Melissa's expression tightened for the first time. Not fear yet, but strain, like she was starting to realize the argument wasn't about belief anymore. It was about compliance. Daniel continued. "No fingerprint match, no DNA confirmation, no verified family identification, just a body labeled and pushed through." He looked directly at the judge. "And one signature that was never supposed to pass audit." Victor froze for a fraction of a second. That was the mistake. The judge noticed it. "Counselor Hale," the judge said slowly, "is there any reason this verification step was bypassed?" Victor opened his mouth, but no sound came out immediately. And in that silence, Daniel placed the final document on the table. A sealed internal audit request from the hospital system. Stamped. Reopened. Triggered only when a living identity matched an unverified death record. The judge looked down at it, then at Victor, then at Melissa, and finally said the words that collapsed everything. "This court is suspending estate proceedings immediately pending fraud investigation." Melissa's breath hitched. Victor finally whispered, almost to himself, "This wasn't supposed to trigger." Daniel looked at both of them, and for the first time, he spoke without anger. Just certainty. "You didn't just fake my death." A pause. "You forgot to finish it properly." The room went completely still, and as court officers began moving toward Victor, Melissa took one slow step back, realizing the ruling had already shifted, not in her favor, not in Victor's, but in Truth's. And Truth had just walked into the courtroom alive.